Let's continue our first lecture, Introduction to Biology. In this part of the lecture, we will discuss characteristics of life. Usually it is easy to recognize life, but it is often much harder to define it. As we learned previously, all living organisms are made of cells. To determine whether an object living or non-living, biologists have agreed on several characteristics that define living things. They are referred to as processes or activities. Life includes such processes as metabolism, motility, responsiveness, reproduction, development, heredity, evolution, and let's us not forget that organization is one of the most important characteristics of the structure of living organism. We discussed this on the beginning of this lecture. Even the word organism used to denote a living thing implies organization. As you saw from the first part of this lecture, although the body is a single structure, it's made up of billions of smaller structures. Atoms and molecules are often referred as a chemical level of organization or lowest level of organization. Cells are considered to be the smallest living units or structures and function of living organisms. Although long recognized as the simplest unit of living matter, cells are far from simple. They're extremely complex. Tissue are somewhat more complex units than cells. By definition, a tissue is an organization of great many similar cells that act together to perform common function. Cells are held together and are surrounded by varying amounts of varieties of glue-like non-living intercellular substances. Organs are more complex units than tissues. An organ is a group of several different kinds of tissues arranged so that together they can perform a specific function. Systems are more complex units that make up the body. A system is an organization of varying numbers and kind of organs arranged so that together these organs can perform complex functions for the body. Metabolism is a sum of all chemical reactions within an organism. Metabolism involves exchange of chemical matter with the external environment and excessive transformation of organic matter within the cells of a living organism. Metabolism generally involves the release or use of chemical energy. Non-living things do not display metabolism. Metabolism is the process by which living organism converts what it eats and drinks into energy. During this complex process, calories in food and beverages are combined with oxygen to release the energy your body needs for function. Even when you are at rest, your body needs energy for all its hidden functions, such as breathing, circulating blood, adjusting hormone levels, and growing and repairing cells. The number of calories your body uses to carry out this basic function is known as your basal metabolic rate, what you might call metabolism. Several factors determine your individual basal metabolism, including your body size and composition, your sex, and your age. In addition to your basic metabolic rate, two other factors determine how many calories your body burns each day. Number one is food processing or thermogenesis. You see, digesting, absorbing, transporting, and sorting the food you consume also takes calories. And another factor is physical activity and exercise, such as playing basketball, walking to the store, chasing after the dog, and any other movement account to the rest of the calories your body burns up each day. Physical activity is far most variable of the factors that determine how many calories you burn each day. Scientists call the activity you do all day that is not deliberate exercise, non-exercise activity thermogenesis. This activity includes walking from room to room, activities such as gardening and even fidgeting. Non-exercise activity thermogenesis accounts for about 100 to 800 calories used daily. It may be tempting to blame your metabolism for weight gain, but because metabolism is a natural process, your body has many mechanisms that regulate it to meet your individual needs. Only in rare cases do you get excessive weight gain from a medical problem that slows metabolism, such as Cushing's syndrome or having an underactive thyroid gland condition known as hypothyroidism. Do not look to dietary supplements to help in burning calories or weight loss. Products that claim to speed up your metabolism are often more hype than help, and some may cause undesirable and even dangerous effects. Dietary supplement manufacturers are not required by US Food and Drug Administration to prove that their products are safe or effective, so view these products with caution. Always let your doctor know about any supplements you take. There is no easy way to lose weight. The foundation to the weight loss continues to be based on physical activity and diet. Take in fewer calories than you burn and you lose weight. If you can add some physical activity to your day, you will accomplish your weight loss goals even faster. Metabolism has two types: anabolism and catabolism. Anabolism is a chemical process in which simpler substances are built up into more complex ones for storage and growth, and also to produce new cellular substances. On the other hand, catabolism is breaking down of complex substances for releasing energy and the natural wear and tear on body structures by living processes. These two types are so woven together and so interdependent that it is difficult to separate them in the living process. Catabolism breaks down complex compounds for the release of energy and structural units, promoting anabolism to occur. Motility is a self-induced movement. All animals can move from place to place or move parts of their bodies. Some animals move with ease as a result of highly developed muscular and nervous systems. The other animals are more limited in their movement. Some plants move about in the water, and at least the leaves of many plants move towards the sun, while some, like hopvine and morning glory, not only grow but move in a certain definite direction. Movement then in animals and plants is unlike the motion of the wind or flowing stream, because each living thing has to supply from its own body the energy required to move. Living things can change the direction and speed of their movements, but non-living things cannot. Motility is the ability of living things to change their position without employing the force of the wind or gravity or similar outside agencies. Living things are sensitive to the following stimuli: to heat, to pain, to light, to presence or absence of nutrients and water in the environment. We call this responsiveness. It is an important life process or function, for it enables them to make the most of their location. Because of this function, living things are able to adapt themselves to their surroundings. All living things produce young or become extinct. The old die and the young continue living. The number of living things is increased on the earth by means of the reproduction, and that is, organisms give rise to others of the same type. Reproduction involves the division of parental material to form offspring. All new organisms are formed at the expense of the old. There are two ways to reproduce: sexually and asexually. Asexual reproduction involves only one parent, and the resulting cells are genetically identical to the parent cell. For example, bacteria grow and quickly reaching maturity, after which they split into two organisms by a process of asexual reproduction called binary fission. Or plants can generate roots from a planted stem, forming genetically identical to a parent plant organism. In organisms that reproduce asexually, all the genetic information comes from one individual or parent. Since the genes are all from one parent, offsprings are usually identical to the parent. Again, because the coded instructions in their cells are the same as the instructions in their parent cells, asexually reproduced offsprings are genetically identical to their parents. Identical genetic copies are known as clones. In the diagram on front of you, you see clones of bacteria. Also, you see clones, the daughter cells of amoeba. Amoeba reproduce asexually by mitosis, a process we will discuss in the lecture 11. This process is important to know in order to understand human cells, cell growth and reproduction. You also see a clone of a plant reproduced by cutting. A plant cutting is a piece of a plant that is used in horticulture for vegetative propagation. A piece of the stem or root of the plant is placed in a suitable medium, such as moist soil. If the conditions are suitable, the plant piece will begin to grow as a new plant independent of the parent, a process known as striking. Cloning is the process of generating a genetically identical copy of a cell or an organism. Cloning happens all the time in nature. In biomedical research, cloning is broadly defined to mean the duplication of any kind of biological material for scientific study, such as a piece of DNA or an individual cell. Despite several highly publicized claims, human cloning still appears to be fiction. There is currently no evidence that anyone has cloned human embryo. But still, theoretically, it is possible. And who knows, perhaps in the future, humans will be able to reproduce asexually. The primary advantage of sex is that it permits combination of different types of chromosomes and therefore traits. Thus, sexual reproduction increases variation among offspring. This means our offspring are different from us. We may be very proud of ourselves and think we fit into our world very well indeed. We may even dominate part of it. Everyone may even agree that we are splendid. However, we are only splendid in our world, the one we live in now. It would be quite presumptuous of us to assume that we would fit into every world with equal ease. And as we know, even our world changes. Thus, if we to make replicants of ourselves, each offspring bearing 100% of our gene, they will do well as long as the world remains as it is now. But they might be in a lot of trouble if it should change. In fact, they might not fit a different kind of world well at all and would die out. But if we mixed our genes randomly with someone else's, we will produce a motley crew of offspring, all of them different. Thus, should new condition arise, at least some one of them would be likely to survive and to propel our genes into yet other generations. This then is essentially the main argument in defense of sex. Another characteristic of living things is growth. Living things grow. Growth can be accomplished in two ways: by cells increasing in numbers or by cells increase in size. Patterns of growth are inherited, so that certain proportions are usually constant from generation to generation. Other factors such as vitamins and hormones also play a part. Humans begin life as a single cell. However, when they born, they are made up of trillions of cells. When they are adults, they consist of even more cells. During the early stage of development, the cells that are made up by cell division begins to undergo differentiation, which simply means that they become different from one another. This leads to the formation of specialized cells, which form the tissue and then the organs of multicellular organisms. In an embryo, an organism in an early stage of development, all genetic information in each cell starts out the same. Morphogenesis is a biological process that causes an organism to develop its shape. You see, growth does not occur at the same rate and at the same time in all parts of the body. It is obvious to anyone that the differences between young swordfish and adult swordfish, or between a newborn baby and an adult human being, are differences not only in overall size, but also in body proportions. The head of a young child is far larger in relation to the rest of its body than an adult. If the child's body was simply to grow as large as an adult while maintaining the same proportions, the result would be a most unadult-like individual. Normal adult proportions arise because the various parts of the body grow at quite different rates or stop growing at different times. Heredity is the passing genetic information from one generation to the next through reproduction. Genetic information is stored in DNA molecule. By RNA molecule, it is passed to the machinery of making proteins. You see, we're all made of same carbohydrates, lipids, but we made of different proteins, and the information how to make those proteins is stored on DNA molecule. Either we are bacteria or humans, we all depend on DNA molecule. A section of DNA molecule is a gene. Either it is bacterial or human genes. They are passed from parents to offspring. In 1858, the work of Charles Darwin and Alfred Russel Wallace showed irrefutably that humans are just another animal occupying a small branch on a vast tree of life. Existing organisms have developed by a process of gradual change from previously existing organisms. This is the evolutionary concept better known as theory of evolution. Evolution is unifying force in modern biology. It is ties together fields such as disparate as genetics, microbiology, and paleontology. It is an elegant and convincing explanation for the staggering diversity of Earth's 9 million or so living species. Ability of organisms to adapt to their environment occurs via natural selection. In every population, there are individuals with different genetic signatures, and some of them may be more or less favorable to the environment. Favorable to the environment genes are passed over the time through the generations, and unfavorable genes become less and less common until they disappear. And this is what drives the evolution. It is important to understand that because of what we just discussed, individuals do not evolve. What evolves is population, and this happens over the time. We will talk about this in more details in one of our upcoming lectures, which is lecture number 4. Now let's compare basic life processes or activities in different organisms and viruses. Viruses are not cells. They are made of only proteins and genetic material. Viruses are not considered to be organisms, and many scientists do not include viruses with living things. In fact, they are considered to be molecular machines. In a few minutes, you will see why. Viruses are intracellular parasites which cause diseases not only in animals and humans, but in fungi, plants, and even bacteria. Those viruses that infect bacteria are called bacteriophages. As we discussed in our previous lecture, there are eukaryotic and prokaryotic organisms. Eukaryotic organisms are made of eukaryotic cells, or cells that contain nucleus or nuclei. These organisms are protista, plants, fungi, and animals, including humans. Each prokaryotic organism are unicellular organism made of a single cell that does not have nucleus. Those organisms are bacteria and archaea. Now question, do these organisms have metabolism? Yes, of course, there are millions of various biochemical reaction occurs in both eukaryotic and prokaryotic organisms. And if this biochemical reaction will cease, the organism will immediately die. The sum of biochemical reaction in an organism we call metabolism. We fight bacteria-caused diseases taking in antibiotics. Antibiotics either bind to important enzyme of bacterial cells or bind to ribosomes that produce protein, and bacterial cells kick the bucket because metabolism is stopped at this point. But as you undoubtedly know, the antibiotics do not work in case with viral infections. Why? Because viruses do not have metabolism, so there is nothing to stop. This is why antibiotics cannot destroy viruses. And because viruses do not have metabolisms, that's what makes them more desperate to be intracellular parasites. They use their host cells for metabolism. Now, how about motility? Do eukaryotic cells capable of having self-induced movement? Yes, of course, eukaryotic organisms capable of moving on their own, and you are a good example of doing so. But how about prokaryotic cells? Are they capable of moving on their own? Yes, of course, they move. They propel through the environment by using flagella or other special structures. How about viruses? Are they capable of moving? Absolutely no. Remember, they do not have metabolism. Movement requires use of energy. Without metabolism, there is no working energy in the organism. So viruses are incapable of moving on their own. That is to say, they are incapable of motility. Therefore, they rely on Brownian movement, random collision of molecules around them. As you perhaps know, molecules around you are in constant motion. So when they bump into the virus, they move it. And this is how viruses move around. Do eukaryotic and prokaryotic cells respond to the environmental stimuli? Yes, both. Eukaryotic and prokaryotic cells respond to the environmental stimuli. Viruses have only one response. They multiply once they enter the host cell. Both eukaryotic and prokaryotic cells reproduce. To reproduce, viruses must invade the cell of a living organism. They reproduce inside host cells only. Both eukaryotic and prokaryotic cells grow in size. Viruses do not grow in size. They do not have metabolism. They even do not have cellular structure. So they do not grow in size. Eukaryotic cells differentiate. Differentiation, as you remember, is the process during which young, immature, unspecialized cells take an individual characteristic and reach their maturity, specialized form and function. Differentiation is a characteristic of cells of multicellular organism, not bacterial cells. So the multicellular eukaryotic organism cells do differentiate. Prokaryotic cells and bacterial cells or archaeal cells do not differentiate. How about viruses? Do viruses differentiate? Viruses do not have metabolism. Without metabolism, it is impossible to either grow in size or differentiate. So viruses fail to meet some standard definition of living. Also, we do not know whether viruses are degenerate forms of more complex ancestors or elaborations of originally simpler forms derived from maverick genetic information of some ancient hosts. We do not even know if viruses descended from a common evolutionary ancestor or derived from more than one common evolutionary ancestor. Thus, it seems wiser to bar viruses' membership in the club of life until we dig up their birth certificates.